Dementia is obviously a simple word, it's dementation. So there's a whole cluster of conditions that fit under dementia. One being the most common for older adults is Alzheimer's dementia. It accounts for 2/3 of late life changes of cognitive ability, which is what dementia really means. There are specific other ones that should be mentioned. One is a condition called Lewy body dementia. It has movement problems, visual hallucinations, but otherwise it's also a downhill course, much like Alzheimer's disease. Vascular dementias come in a few different flavors depending upon where in the brain the injury occurs. And therefore it can be more of a mosaic pattern with areas of strength and weakness. There's one other major dementia that can affect even younger adults called frontotemporal dementia that impacts the frontal lobe of the brain. And the reason that becomes important is that the frontal lobe is intrinsically involved with executive decision making, behavioral filtration, appropriateness of behavior. And in this regard, it's very different than Alzheimer's disease, which really begins mostly with recent memory problems and language problems. As we eventually begin to try to understand whether someone can give capacity, decision making capably, it really depends on what the decision is and where is the deficit in the brain, and therefore what functions are they able to rely on. You may hear a term in the future called mild and more severe neurocognitive disorders. It means the same thing as dementia. No one gets there immediately. They gradually evolve from normal mental processes through a region that you might call mild cognitive impairment, eventually into a dementia. So those who are mild cognitively impaired, by definition, have a measurable deficit, albeit mild, and yet are able to function superficially, apparently well in their day-to-day life.
Cognitive impairment, similar to capacity, is somewhat on a continuum. And at some point on that continuum, the impairment is significant enough that it gets to that tipping point into a dementia diagnosis, which is if there's memory and cognitive impairment to the degree that it affects the person's functioning in at least one area of daily life on a daily basis. So anything up to that point that's not quite that severe is mild cognitive impairment. And what's very typical is that people can have impairment in one cognitive domain or another, for example, with short-term memory or with financial calculations, adding, subtracting, et cetera. Recalling something from a list of items, like remembering what you're going to get at the store. There are a number of different cognitive tasks that we can measure with testing tools to show that there are impairments in different areas.
Folks who have dementia need to be protected, and if they are abused physically, sexually, or financially, their cases need to be prosecuted. And it will sometimes be more challenging to prosecute that case, but oftentimes I think it could be less of a challenge to prosecute that case, because if you have a victim that is especially seriously impaired and they are abused or exploited, all you do is present the evidence about their mental condition through various witnesses and go forward with your case. I have found that the juries tend to be outraged and they do the right thing. So for a new prosecutor handling an elder abuse case with a victim with dementia, it may seem to be really overwhelming, but I would suggest that after talking to witnesses like the victim's doctors, nurses, who can say, yes, she used to be able to carry on a conversation. Now she can't even put two sentences together. You can prove your case in many different ways. That these cases can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, and that they can be incredibly rewarding.